Why would women be dying in hospital today? Why is life political? Why are people dying on the roads, road accidents? Government in B, right? Everything is politicized. Our children, maybe abana okusoma, political. Everything. You tell me one thing that's so political. When I was a prisoner in Luzira Women Prison, there were bars. Twalina emitayimbo egitwetoolodde ne kkufulu ng'oziraba ku geeti era nga ne woodi ogiraba bakuggalira. Mwana ne bakwambaza uniform ya yellow n'owulira obusibe nga naawe olabira ddala oli musibe. Olw'okuba gwe toli mu uniform ya yellow ey'Eluzira Women Prison, tolaba mitayimbo egikwetoolodde, tolaba kkufulu. Olowooza oli dembe, olina eddembe lyo weetaaya, bambi baakulimba. In fact, ze nalina eddembe nga ndi Eluzira okwogera ku gavumenti eno n'enjikalakata ne nsomesa abasibe b'Eluzira abakyala. Bannyabo ne mbasomesa n'okusinga eddembe lye nina leero nga siri Luzira. Nalina akazindaalo okwogera buli kye nali njagala ng'omusibe ate bali bagenda kunkola ki? Teri Luzira ndala bwe twayogeranga. Teri Luzira ndala. Naye kati waliwo besobola kwogera. Bagamba nti Nyanzi ajja, ajja ku radio yaffe. Oyo n'oyo mumugambe tayogera. Okay? So, it's too late not to be politicized. Everything is, and I think the problem is, omuntu omusibe bw'abeera ng'ekikoko ekitamanyi nti kisibiddwa, tamanya na bwakwerwanako. But have you got my point? That we can't. Sadly, our reality as Ugandans is we can't even buy a bubble outside politics. No kubeera wano. Space. I would like to have this interview with you at the Constitutional Square. I would. Because it's our right. I would like to go to Kololo and sit there and sit with you and talk about Labor Day in our space. I can't. So everything for me is politicized. I don't know what you might think of that's not, but everything is politicized. And the sooner we know it and we get roles for ourselves, buli omu talina kwekalakaasa nga Nyanzi, naye oyinza okumpa amazzi nenywa eddoboozi ne liddamu nze nenzirayo nendeekaana. Bwe bankwata oyinza okulambula abaana bange, tewali ajja kukulaba naye struggle oba ogizimbye. Ffenna abaagala Uganda ekyuse twandibadde banna struggle.
Naye nga, is it possible nti everything has to be politicized?
Everything is political, sweetheart. Everything is political. Everything is political. Okumanya biri political. N'ebimu bye nkugambye ogenda bisala kuba tosobola byogera mu mpewo. Everything today in Uganda is politicized, whether you smile or not. Your red lipstick bayinza okugamba lwaki bayambadde red, oliwa people power. Okiraba ze nyambadde ka yellow. Bayinza okugamba ti Nyanzi bakiguze, ekyo kyalya dda kinyampi. Right? Everything right now is politicized because many of us are disgruntled. Twalina kubaako kyonkoze n'ekimu okukyawa. Obukyayi buvaawa nti ebintu ensi ekaaye. So for me, omuntu agamba nti must everything be politicized? Sweetheart, everything is political. Sigambye nti birimu abanene mu gavumenti. Ze nkugambye nti buli kimu kati tulina kirwanira okukisigaza ekyaffe. Otegedde? Why would women be dying in hospital today? Why is life political? Why are people dying on the roads, road accidents? Government in B. Right? Everything is politicized. Our children, maybe abana okusoma. Political. Everything. You tell me one thing that's so political. Endongo abagendanga mu ndongo ffe ndongo eyaffe tebiriimu politics bali mu ndongo. Lero bagaddewo. Police ejja kujja ekuggale. Everything is political. Kabia kali political. Okusaba ekiro nga mugwaza okusiiba. Government erina okugamba nti ojja kusiiba waliwo curfew osiibulukuke oba tewali curfew ojja kusiibulukuka essaawa z'oyagala. Everything today is politicized. And so for me when you say why must we but it's not we politicizing it. when we live in the sort of dictatorships that we do, everything is politicized, sadly. And I think that for me, the sooner we all realize that we have a part to play, the better.
So, Dr. Nyanzi, you feel like when we get change, these things that buli kimu kifuuse political kinakyuka?
Of course. So for me, change, when Yoweri Museveni got power in 1986, as he was giving his presidential speech, he told us that this was not just a change of guard. This was a fundamental change. Sadly for us, yali fundamental change kati yaddayo bye twali tulwanisa luli nga tannaba kujja bye tulwanisa leero byebimu bizeemu. Omusajja yakuba oluyimba lyaja bizeemu. Fundamental change tegeeza ki? What is fundamental change? It's fundamental change, right? The struggle for liberation, the struggle for freedom, the struggle for emancipation, the struggle against corruption will continue until there is a fundamental change. Because sadly, we were given byoya byanswa. We weren't given, nze njagala nkwate enswa ezo nziryeko, naye enswa ze baatuwa mwana wattu byoya, enkooye okugaaya ebyoya. And I think that when we get to the point where our government has changed to work for the everyday person, we shall know, right? Someone said to me, Nyanzi, it seems you're an opposition, that's your vocation, your employment, your profession these days. You're just an opposition member. And even if FDC gets into power, you'll continue being an opposition member. And I said, for me, the issue is no longer who am I opposing? It is what am I opposing? If I'm opposing the abuse of women, and Yoweri Museveni is abusing women, his government is abusing women, his government twalina ekita bakyala bawambanga abakazi ne babasuula ku nguudo nga bamaze okujja ku family zaabwe ssente ne bamusuula ku luguudo nga bamubambye nga bamutaddeyo eccupa oba ekiti. Gavumenti bw'eba etta abakyala etulugunya abakyala ate neesanga nga neewange mu opposition batulugunya abakyala nga bwe nnwanyisa gavumenti etulugunya abakyala bwe ngenda okulwanyisa neewange kubanga saagala kutulugunya ku bakyala kuddemu nga tuzze mu buyinza. Otegedde mwana wange? So for me, waliwo luli nalwanisanga muntu nalwanisanga kibiina naye omusota guba musota. A snake remains a snake. Oba kasota kato kali wange oba gusse sota guli eri ewa Museveni kasita nkulabamu obusagwa. I think it's important to keep fighting. When shall we stop? When we get there. Because a woman who's been oppressed knows when the oppression has ended. A country whose roads are suffering from corruption will know when the roads no longer suffer from corruption. No mwana omuto akiraba nti leero ne kasooli osobola omusuula wali n'amera mu luguudo wakati nti abasajja bakwata amasannyalaze ne bagabba abawomeme ne babayitako ng'ate abalala babakwata. Bano lwaki tebabakwata? Genda ku CMI olabe layini z'amasannyalaze ezibbibwa. Okay? Ate nga bagabba CMI gavumenti maje balina ssente nnyingi nnyo. Nolaba layini zigenda ku CMI. Otegedde? When we no longer have those sorts of malpractices, we shall know. When women stop dying in hospitals because of no electricity, no medicine, no doctors, overworked doctors, we shall know when the struggle is ending. So will these things change? Of course they'll change. And I think for me that my work right now is to change society for myself and my children, because maybe that's what I can change. Also, I know what the issues are for myself. I don't want the next government to come and reproduce the very same issues. Tutuuke nga ffenna twambadde engule naye nga ate ffenna tutulugunya abakazi nga ffenna tulinyirira eddembe ly'abakozi.
Munaabeereyo mu ntebe munaaba mukyabijjukira ebintu ebyo nti
Kyevudde nkugamba nti nze sikyalwanyisa muntu oba kibiina, nwanyisa kutulugunyizibwa okwo.
entebe ekyusa muyinza otuukira ne mukyuka ntuga Nyanzi waffe.
Kyuka wandimulabye. Bansiba eruzira ntulaga ekikazi kiteredde. Bwe banaakita kijja kukomawo nga kyonna kiwombeefu. Nakomawo ŋŋamba we natandikira, siraba we nakoma, we natandikira. So waliwo bakyuke. I think for me that it's personal. I'm a feminist. Feminists say that the political is personal and the personal is political. Because I am involved in my political struggles from a very personal point, right? Mba neeriddemu olukwe okuva mu political struggle yange, right? Ensonga z'abakyala mba neeriddemu olukwe ng'omukyala, kubanga nnyinza okuba sikyazaala ate gwe muwala wange n'ogenda mu ddwaliro ng'ebyokukyusa amalwaliro gaffe nabivaako dda, olaba bw'ofiira mu ssanya so nga ate maama wo ng'atuuse yandibadde yakukyusiza. So I think for me it's very personal and sirabangayo muntu yali yeekutte. I haven't seen somebody raping themselves, right? Sirabangayo muntu agenda mu nsawo ye ne yebba. Wadde gye bali. And I think obbe ekyo ekitali kikyo. Nze struggle eno yange, it's personal. Tine bwe mba nsigadde bwogo nsigala ku front line nenkuba paka lwenkiggusa. And I think for me part of my journey is really about making meaningful change. And I want the change at the top, but I also want the change here with my children, with my neighbors, with my shopkeeper, with my doctor, with the people on the road. Wemba mvuge mmotoka mbere nga ndi munnakyukakyuka ne ku luguudo ne mu maduuka ne nti tujja kukyusa waggulu naye nga n'ensi yange mwembeera everyday nze ngitereezezza. Abammanyi bammanyi, abasirikale ku luguudo lw'embeerako, traffic policemen bamanyi okuyimiriza abantu ne babawa enjawulo. Nze these days bandaba ne bagamba gwe when new traffic policemen come to the road and they're like, now madam, chai, what? I'm like, hey, it is their very own associates who say to them, that one, don't even go there because she will get your name and expose you on radio and say, this man asked me for 5,000 shillings for tea on the road. And what that does is it has alerted policemen around that Nyanzi will report you. It's very good, isn't it good? It also means that for me, I make sure that my car and my traffic habits are praiseworthy. Kubanga lwe balifuna olulaku okunkwata mitwalo 10 kipapula. Kubanga sibawanze sisasula nguzi sigana girwanyisa waggulu ate neeno wansi nkole ki gikole.
So Dr. Nyanzi, twakulabanga oyisimbawo bipande twabirabanga ogenze ku lugendo lw'okuyingira parliament. What do you think went wrong okulabanga tewayingira?
Nothing went wrong. I think that omuntu atavuganyangako yatamanyi nti no wabeerawo asinga n'abatayitamu. Nze okuva lwe nali mu nursery, my parents taught me competition, fair and square competition. Do as much as you want. My family, my sisters, my children are very competitive. Tukola nnyo okulaba nti tusinga. But my parents taught me nti there's always one winner. Even when my children who are twins have competitions, there's always one winner. My parents told me, you work so hard to win. When you don't win, you never have a regret and say, I didn't do my best. So what went wrong? Nothing. Nothing went wrong. I studied Kampala. I began my campaign in the year I was released from prison. In January 2020, I was a convicted prisoner serving time at Luzira Women Prison. In February 2020, I was acquitted and released without a single conviction, no sentence. March 2020, there was a lockdown. April 2020, I was admitted with poisoned kidneys. May 2020, I was readmitted with poisoned kidneys. June 2020, I decide I'm going to contest. So anybody who knows that we're campaigning from June up to December knows we have 6 months. 6 months to do what? I'm an academic who's been an activist, who's been a prisoner. I don't have the resources. I don't have the time. I don't have the platform. I was in FDC, but one of the little unknown people in FDC. I worked so hard and became a darling of FDC. After having offended them, I offended them when I suggested unity, where Robert Chagulanyi would be president and Chiza Besigye would be his prime minister. And people in FDC hated me and they decampaigned me. But in that season, I was able to turn their hearts around, sell my manifesto to them, and during vetting, where I was competing against other FDC women, I was given the flag. That is not going wrong. That is things going so right that it was my party that mainly supported my campaign. I entered Kampala, right? Nobody knowing me. I penetrated every slum, every market, every neighborhood in Kampala. That is not small. That's a huge accomplishment. Wekuba kufumita na fumita buli kanyomero ke Kampala nze stellanyanzi ne campaign team yange. Publicity. I was running against people who had money to go to radio and TV. My sister, I was on radio and TV almost every night of the campaign. Sometimes 3 times different radio stations in one day. That is not small. I got campaign posters. Not many, not enough. But they were there. Huge ones, small ones, little ones, social media, on the roads, jingles. All of this is how to run a campaign. Nobody teaches anybody how to run a political campaign. I went to school free of charge. Okay? Boots on the ground, studying how to run a campaign as an opposition member in Kampala. Did things go wrong? No. Because I am much better off than many other women who never participated in this race. Did I lose anything? No! I had no resources to start with. Omusiba batakola eruzira. Abantu bakwata sente zabwe baziteekamu. Balina amabanja ze sirina Nyanzi nava mu campaign. Mpozi omusajja gundi Fred eyankolera abo bills obwasembayo. Emitwalo nga 10 zijukidde kati. Fred jangu kusasule. Fred amanja bu handout. I've worked with him for a long time. That kantu katuno kasasulwa, right? Sina banja. Abantu bangi balina amabanja. Omukyala gwe nali ngenda okudda mu bigere Ndabila. Twamulaba wano nga kalulu kawedde. Bwe yaswazibwa ennyumba ye baagala ogimutwalako. Kubanga abantu bangi beewola. Bakole political campaigns zeseewola. If anything, simanya abantu abampanga essente zaabwe. So when you say to me nti what went wrong, tewali. Mwana wange tewali. Nafuna kadi y'ekibiina. Sava mu kibiina kyange. There was an opportunity for me to cross and go to NUP. I refused and stayed loyal to my party. That is not going wrong. My loyalty to my party was clearly portrayed. Tewali agamba nti Nyanzi wanka. Nasigala mu FDC. Erinnya lyange mulimanyi. Buli wempita stellanyanzi, honorable Nyanzi, ekikazi ekyo asi kikazi honorable. Okay? Abantu ne bamanya. People know who I am and what I'm about. Right? That is not small. That is very big. Was I disappointed not to go to Parliament? I was. Because I wanted to go to Parliament because I had things to do in Parliament. I still have things to do in Parliament. And so for me, my slogan, from prison to Parliament, is still effective because I'm still a prisoner who wants to go and change the laws of this country. I'm still on the journey to Parliament. I didn't go this time. Who says I want to go tomorrow? But also the many ways of entering Parliament. One of the things I'm doing now is understudying the Parliament of Uganda. I have all the Hansards in my house. I want to review what members of Parliament are doing. I'll be doing that for 5 years, so I don't have to be in Parliament to do this. But I'm in Parliament. I'll take it there. So what went wrong? Nothing. I think for me it was a beautiful campaign. I got over 60,000 votes. Shared, we got votes. We were, I think, 11 or was it 10 women. All of us got some votes. Nothing went wrong.
So, in Parliament, there is this Chalichi Siwantin Mutanka Oko okufuga ebisanja musanvu 7 years. So woyingira parliament, do you agree with that or you feel 5 is enough?
Ati sayingira.
No, as in boyingira, do you feel 5 is enough because already you are now a honorable?
Parliament gye ngenda okuyingira egenda kutuusa buli kimu. Bino ebya parliament ebyokuyisa okumala gayisa kankubuulire bw'obeera omunnyo osigala oli munnyo. Okay? This is scripture. Simanyi ddiini gy'osoma. But salt does not lose its saltiness. Omunnyo ne bw'oguteeka mu sukaali ak'obunnyo kasigalamu. So nze buli we ŋŋenda nkyusa embeera kasita Nyanzi azze. Bwe nyingira parliament eyo bikyuka. Kye ŋŋamba nti for me bino si bya katemba, this is me, transformation njagala njagala si bya kwekozesa nfuneyo ku bululu. Bwe ŋŋamba nti njagala Uganda ekola kubanga ze Nyanzi ngenda nalina abaana benjagala okulekera Uganda ekola ng'ebakolera oba alina esente batayina. Naye Uganda yaleero ekolera muntu alina esente. And so it is not an act, it's not a performance, it's real. I yearn for transformation. And if I were in parliament, it would change. Bano abakyala abawanika obuwanisi emikono bayise buli kijja nga wendi njogera nabo nga tulya lanchi ne mbakyusa emitima. Nze ndi mukyusi wa mitima. N'abaami njogera nabo ne mbawa enjiri yo. Nze ndi munnankyukakyuka, my dear. And so my plan for parliament was, among other things, to make it honorable, because there are a number of so-called honorable members of parliament who are betrayers, they are turncoats, they are sellouts, they are Judases. They don't represent the will of the masses. They have forgotten the poor masses whom they're supposed to represent, for whom they're supposed to budget, right? I think for me that they are kutereza ki kwetegereza ki
so kanebayiga then etano jakufuga.
Right, so I think for me that waliwo ebintu ebiteesebwako ebiteeso ebireetebwa nga tebigasa muntu wa bulijjo. Nze ndowooza myaka 7 baali baagala kweyongeza misaala mingi. Ekirungi kyange nti ne bwe ndiba ngenze mu palamenti ezijja ebyokukyusa bijja kuba bikyaliwo, right? Kyamukisa mulungi, nze ndowooza kati kyamukisa mulungi nti saagenda mu kisanja kya M7 kuba M7 yazzeeko. Kiri kyali mu kisanja hakuna mchezo, kino kigenda kuba kisanja kunuuna musaayi. Sigenda kuba omu ku nseke z'akozesa okwongera okunuuna omusaayi okuva mu bannayuganda. Nandyagadde okutuula mu gavumenti eya omukulembeze omupya. I would love to be in parliament under a new dispensation, under a new president. And maybe that's what I'm waiting for, that I'll become a member of parliament when it's meaningful, when parliament is about changing its character to work for people and not work for the dictator in power.
Ogambye nti ogenda kufuga mu bisanja parliament ezijja, that's plural, ezijja. Owulira nga osobola ogenda kufuga nga bisanja bimeka?
Nedda. Parliament ezijja kitegeeza ki? Kitegeeza ki?
The upcoming.
Ngamba parliament ezijja gwolaba bisanja. Waliwo parliament y'abantu, waliwo parliament ya Uganda, waliwo olukiiko parliament yaffe Abaganda. Parliament za bika bingi. Parliament is a law making body, is a legislation body. So parliament nyingi. Ebisanja kijja kusinzira ku ki kinaabeerawo nga ntuuse, right? Tuyinza okuba ne parliament nga ffe tusazeewo okubeera mu temporary government egenda okubeerawo emyaka 2, tumale tubere n'akalulu. Okay? So nyinza okubeera mu eyo parliament yaffe ya myaka 2, nyinza okuba mu parliament endala ya myaka 5, nyinza okuba mu parliament nga constitution egambye emyaka 5. So situnuulira kisanja, ntunuulira okuteesa okunaabeerawo n'amateeka gana bagafuga duration kyeki mu Luganda, whatever laws will be, period ye Luganda.
Wali munoonyi wa buddamu ng'oli mwana muto ng'okula, kiki ekyakutuusa ku mbeera eyo?